month of February 2020, a research paper co-authored by two Chinese scientists based at separate Wuhan universities appeared online as a preprint. It tackled the fundamental question: how did the novel bat coronavirus get to a major metropolis of 11 million people in central China in the dead of winter, when most bats were hibernating, and turn a market where bats weren't sold into the epicenter of an outbreak? And there were only two plausible origins. The first was the Wuhan Center for Disease Control and Prevention, which sat 280 meters from the Huanan market and had been known to collect hundreds of bat samples. The second, the researchers wrote, was the Wuhan Institute of Virology, where all the US grants had been going.
I want that, I need that, that's real, homie, I can't believe that.
The lab-based scenarios are all conspiracy theories because they propose that there's a scientist somewhere, and not just one scientist, but a group of scientists who are covering up. That is the essence of a conspiracy theory.
Trump himself floated the lab leak hypothesis last April. His divisiveness and lack of credibility made things more, not less, challenging for those seeking the truth.
The China virus, the China plague,
Kung flu.
the doctors would say, well...
Did Trump's rhetoric impede conversation about any alternative in the world of COVID and how it might have come about?
Absolutely. Scientifically, I think the minute Trump blurted out that he'd read a report that said this could be a laboratory leak, I guess the scientific establishment then said, well, if Trump said that, we have to drive the opposite agenda to prove that Trump doesn't know what he's talking about.
At a White House COVID-19 press briefing on April 17, 2020, a reporter from Newsmax asked Trump about the $3.7 million NIH grant to a Level 4 lab in China. NIH is the National Institute of Health, where Anthony Fauci sits as the director. So the question was, why would the US give a grant like that to China? The reporter asked. And Trump responded, we will end that grant very quickly, adding, who was president then, I wonder. From the National Institute of Health notified Daszak in writing that his grant had been terminated. The order had come from the White House, something Dr. Fauci later testified to before a congressional committee. And the decision fueled a firestorm. 81 Nobel laureates in science denounced the decision in an open letter to Trump health officials, and 60 Minutes ran a segment focused on the Trump's administration's short-sightedness in politicization of science.
Dr. Anthony Fauci. His expertise fighting the coronavirus pandemic has made him a hero to many, just not his boss, the US president. Talk about shooting the messenger. Donald Trump continually undermines his chief scientific advisor, calling him alarmist.
Now, the science community got into damage control mode, all right? In May 2020, the World Health Assembly requested the World Health Organization Director General to work closely with partners to determine the origins of the SARS-CoV-2, all right? So everybody that has been involved in the gain-of-function research experiments at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, come here and let's investigate ourselves and let's come up with a report that we are going to make official, all right? That's basically it.
The independent expert team to study the origins of the COVID-19 virus has completed its trip to China.
So the World Health Organization published a 300-page report of their findings, citing minimal evidence of why a leak from the lab was the least likely cause, and a great deal of why the bat theory was extremely likely. The investigation was a milestone for changing attitudes towards the lab leak theory, but totally inadequate in disapproving the possibility of a lab spill. The experts determined only the theory that the natural virus escaped a lab through the accidental infection of staff, but it didn't consider the hypothesis of a deliberate release or deliberate bioengineering of the virus, which scientists had already ruled out.
I think it would be wrong to shut down one line of that questioning and say that's conspiracy theory, only leaving us with the one possibility, which is it came from an animal. As a scientist, we have to explore both possibilities until we can at least exclude one, and we can't do that right now.
This also poked holes into the report. Although it was considered a joint effort between the Chinese and the WHO officials, investigators representing the WHO were denied permission to visit the Wuhan market and collect other data in the initial phases of the research, leading some pundits to say that the WHO was ceding responsibility to China, its second biggest funder behind the United States. China also held back information about the initial outbreak in Wuhan, which delayed the WHO's investigations. After months of a pandemic-ravaged economy and being branded the conspiracist-in-chief, Trump and his foot soldiers decided to go with their gut. China lied, people died, and the WHO is on their side. An undisclosed project run out of the Arms Control Unit and led by then Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was established in late 2020 to investigate the possibility a Chinese bioweapons lab played a role in the pandemic's origin.
These emails show that in the very early stages of the pandemic, in early 2020, he became concerned that the funding for gain-of-function research in the US had flown to Wuhan. And we see there's a flurry of emails where he's trying to find out whether he could be responsible or whether the NIH could be responsible for funding the research.
On the 26th of May 2021, President Joe Biden's administration shut down the clandestine operation intended to prove the lab-based origins of COVID-19 over concerns about the work's poor quality and its politicized, premature, and selective use by Trump and his allies to blame the pandemic on China.
I never thought it would happen. I mean,
Yes.
when I did the secret investigation, I just thought I should respond to my supervisor and they will do the right thing on behalf of the government and also WHO. But what I see by deeper investigation is no one respond to that. People are scared of the government and they are willing to collaborate with China government and WHO to get more benefits, to become safe.
However, the steady crescendo of questions into the origins of the novel virus led President Joe Biden to release a statement acknowledging that the intelligence community had coalesced around two likely scenarios and announced that he had asked for a more definitive conclusion within 90 days. His statement noted the failure to get our inspectors on the ground in those early months will always hamper any investigation into the origins of COVID-19. From day one, China has been engaged in a massive cover-up. However, the Western leadership willingly aided in the cover-up from the shadows, while publicly pursuing diplomacy over transparency. Scientists determined conspiracy theories do nothing but create fear, rumors, and prejudice that jeopardize our global collaboration in the fight against this virus. Any contradiction to the mainstream consensus of the origin of the virus, even among professionals, was silenced in the name of the higher good. The Western media, out of political bias or blatant malfeasance, consequently misinformed the public. The one person who broke protocol and spoke the truth was vilified for it. And we can debate all this. But the one thing we cannot or shouldn't in all conscience is that the gain-of-function experiments going on in China aided by US funding is the real reason a great deal of lives has been lost. The science community understood the risks and still went against their better judgment. I don't know about you, but that is how I feel. I've been your host, Twips. The channel is Intrinsic Kenya. I hope to see you in the next one.
I want that.